They lie awake, caught in the quiet storm of their own mind. Each thought circles, spirals, returns, an echo with no end. In these moments, overthinking is not merely an activity, it is a companion, insistent and unyielding. It whispers of what-ifs, of mistakes remembered in excruciating detail, of conversations that never happen but replay endlessly. Time stretches, yet nothing moves forward. This is not laziness. Nor is it simply worry. It is a subtle erosion, a quiet weight pressing against the chest, shaping perception, reshaping reality. There is a beauty and a terror in this mindscape, a relentless curiosity about oneself, and a fragile longing for certainty that never arrives. To observe overthinking is to confront the shadow side of awareness itself, where reflection becomes entrapment, and insight, a double-edged sword. Chapter 1: The Whispering. The mind, when left unchecked, has a voice that never rests. It murmurs quietly at first, a fleeting doubt, a casual, what if, and yet these whispers gather weight, forming a subtle storm that can consume entire hours, even days. Each thought breeds another, small seeds sprouting into tangled vines of worry, replaying old conversations, imagined failures, and choices that might have been. To live inside this ceaseless mental commentary is to feel simultaneously alert and exhausted. There is a strange intimacy with one's own mind, yet also a sense of betrayal. The very organ meant to guide and protect becomes a relentless critic. Everyday decisions, what to say, what to do, how to feel, are filtered through this overactive lens. Nothing is neutral, nothing passes without scrutiny. This whispering is both gentle and insistent. It can appear in quiet moments, lying in bed, walking alone, or washing dishes, turning the ordinary into a hall of mirrors. And in these reflective halls, one begins to question not only actions but identity itself. Am I enough? Did I handle that correctly? What will happen next? Overthinking is not just about thoughts. It is about presence, being fully awake to every shadow of possibility, every nuance of experience, and yet being trapped in a cycle that resists rest. It is the mind's quiet tyranny. Chapter 2: Seeds of Restlessness. Overthinking rarely emerges without origin. Like a river carving its path, it begins subtly, shaped by experiences, environments, and expectations. In childhood, small patterns of vigilance, being careful to please, to avoid mistakes, to anticipate disapproval, lay the foundation. A reprimand remembered too vividly, a question left unanswered, a moment of uncertainty experienced as danger, these are the seeds. Cultural pressures often water them. In societies that prize achievement, predictability, and control, the mind learns early that mistakes are costly and uncertainty intolerable. Curiosity and caution blur together, forming habits of constant evaluation. Even moments meant for play can be punctuated by mental rehearsal, self-judgment, and quiet comparison to others. Family dynamics, too, leave subtle imprints. A child who witnesses anxiety in a caregiver may absorb it without knowing how, mimicking the internal loops that later define overthinking. Early experiences of loss, unpredictability, or emotional inconsistency amplify this tendency, making vigilance a necessary survival tool. By adolescence, these tiny seeds have grown into persistent mental threads. They are invisible, yet they tug constantly, shaping perception and emotional response. The mind becomes a garden overgrown with what-ifs, each thought both a product and a reinforcer of the restlessness within. Overthinking is not born from flaw or weakness. It is a human adaptation, a mind striving for safety and certainty in a world that often feels unpredictable. And yet, in its persistence, it quietly steals presence, leaving awareness tangled in its own intricate roots. Chapter 3: The Science. The restless mind is not a mystery, it is a mechanism, finely tuned yet easily unbalanced. Neurologically, overthinking engages circuits meant for problem-solving and foresight. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning and reflection, becomes overactive, replaying events and imagining countless scenarios. Each thought triggers another, forming what psychologists call a ruminative loop. Stress amplifies these loops. The amygdala, the brain's sentinel for threat, heightens sensitivity to uncertainty, real or imagined. Even minor decisions can feel monumental, each possibility weighed against invisible standards. Cortisol pulses, attention narrows, and the mind grows hyper-focused on potential mistakes. Over time, this cycle can reinforce itself, creating a persistent pattern of mental overactivity. Psychologically, overthinking is closely linked to anxiety and perfectionism. The mind attempts to predict, to control, to anticipate every outcome. But certainty is an illusion, and the gap between imagined possibilities and reality only feeds further rumination. Memory also plays a role. Vivid recollection of past missteps becomes fodder for analysis, reinforcing self-criticism. Yet there is nuance. Overthinking is not purely destructive. It is the brain's attempt to adapt, to anticipate danger, to refine understanding. The problem emerges when reflection becomes entrapment, when observation overrides action, and awareness of possibility becomes a prison rather than a guide. In understanding the science of these loops, the shadow of overthinking is illuminated, revealing both the brilliance and the vulnerability of the human mind. Chapter 4: Trapped in Reflection. Overthinking is not a passive act. It is a tension, a subtle battle between curiosity and fear, between the desire to understand and the exhaustion of knowing too much. Each thought examined leads to another, creating a hall of mirrors in which clarity seems perpetually just out of reach. Decisions are delayed, conversations replayed endlessly, and the simplest choice can feel impossibly complex. This inner conflict breeds resistance. There is a simultaneous longing for resolution and a compulsion to continue analyzing, as if stopping would expose some hidden flaw or danger. Emotional fatigue sets in, not from external demands, but from the mind itself. Self-criticism grows louder, whispering that nothing is done perfectly, nothing is safe, nothing is enough. Even moments of joy are tempered by the awareness of what could go wrong, or what has been missed. Social interactions, too, become minefields. Words are dissected, intentions second-guessed, silences overanalyzed. Relationships feel both essential and hazardous, as the mind projects imagined outcomes onto every encounter. The overthinker becomes both participant and observer of their own life, caught in a duality that isolates even amidst connection. And yet, this reflection is not inherently meaningless. It is an expression of deep sensitivity, a mind acutely aware of consequence and nuance. The cost is high, but so is the capacity to perceive, to feel, and to question, a double-edged consciousness that waits quietly for recognition and for understanding. Chapter 5: Glimpses of Clarity. Even within the labyrinth of overthinking, moments of quiet clarity emerge. They are fleeting, often unnoticed at first, an unexpected pause between thoughts, a realization that the mind is circling once more yet no longer entirely captive. In these glimpses, awareness itself becomes the observer rather than the participant, a subtle shift that feels both fragile and profound. The first hint of clarity often comes through noticing the patterns. Thoughts that once felt spontaneous begin to reveal themselves as repetitions, loops shaped by fear, habit, and the mind's relentless search for certainty. Recognition does not erase the cycle, but it softens its grip. The overthinker learns that observation need not mean judgment, and understanding need not demand action. Sometimes, clarity arrives in silence, the quiet in a room, the steady rhythm of breath, or a moment of connection with another. In these intervals, the mind glimpses that not every possibility must be chased, not every past mistake dissected. The storm can pause, if only briefly, and in that pause exists a subtle relief, the realization that presence is possible, even amid rumination. These moments are transformative, not because they solve the mind's endless questions, but because they illuminate the possibility of coexistence. Overthinking does not need to vanish entirely. It can be seen, held, and gently acknowledged. Clarity becomes a quiet companion, whispering that the mind can reflect without being trapped. Chapter 6: Gentle Integration. Integration is not about eliminating overthinking, it is about learning to live alongside it. The mind's loops do not disappear, they soften, becoming part of the broader landscape rather than a consuming force. Over time, awareness allows reflection to shift from relentless analysis to quiet observation, from judgment to curiosity. This process begins with recognition, noticing the mental patterns without shame or self-condemnation. The mind is treated as a companion rather than an adversary, its restlessness acknowledged as a signal of care, sensitivity, or a desire for understanding. Each thought becomes a visitor, not a captor, and the spaces between thoughts grow more expansive. Integration also involves reframing. The very tendencies that once trapped become tools for insight. Awareness of detail, attention to nuance, and capacity for anticipation can coexist with peace, provided they are met with gentle acceptance rather than fear. Emotional energy once spent in resistance is gradually returned to presence, to connection, and to simple being. Relationships with oneself and others evolve as well. Decisions are approached with clarity tempered by compassion. Conversations are entered without the weight of imagined outcomes. Overthinking remains, but it is no longer a tyrant, it becomes a quiet observer, a reminder of the mind's capacity to perceive and reflect. In this integration, life gains a rhythm, thought and stillness, reflection and presence, insight and acceptance. The restless mind is no longer solely a storm, it is part of a living, breathing human experience, full of subtle depth and possibility. Chapter 7 Evening Reflections. As the day winds down, the mind often quiets, not because the thoughts have ceased, but because the night provides space for them to settle. Overthinking, once relentless, drifts into the background, like a river slowing after a long course. In these moments, reflection becomes less a compulsion and more a gentle companion. Evening holds a certain poetry. The mind, freed from the pressures of action, can observe itself with tender clarity. Memories of the day, of choices made and words spoken, drift past like leaves on water. Some are examined briefly, others are released, recognized as part of the human pattern of curiosity, error, and growth. There is room for quiet gratitude, for noticing the small victories, simply surviving, simply noticing, simply being present. In this stillness, overthinking transforms. It is no longer a storm but a subtle rhythm, a reminder of the mind's capacity to care, to anticipate, and to engage with life's complexities. Acceptance emerges, not as surrender, but as understanding. The loops remain, but they no longer dominate. They are threads woven into the rich fabric of consciousness, offering insight without imprisonment. The night holds a gentle promise, that even a mind prone to endless reflection can find peace. In the quiet, one realizes that overthinking is not a flaw but a facet of human depth, a testament to sensitivity, intelligence, and the intricate beauty of awareness itself.